when you find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. And so when I think of my substance abuse and my chronic pain, people would say, well, wasn't that challenging to think about? I said, no, because it was my way to where I am. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be, you go through those experiences. I have a lot of experiences when I think about my work with Kobe or MJ or any other Shaq or could be Dennis Rodman, whatever.
Yeah.
That experience. And then last year, working with the Edmonton Oilers and going to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
That's an experience no one can take from you.
Before we hop into this episode, I have one favor to ask of you. If you've got any kind of information or inspiration from this podcast, it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button. Just like most podcasts out there are more people that watch this show that are not subscribed than that are subscribed. And so if you want to help me get bigger and better guests for this show as we go along, and I hope you do stick along, it would mean the world to me to hit that subscribe button so that we can make it happen. Thank you. And let's get into the interview.
So the text is, may you find inner peace, serenity, and tranquility in a world you may not always understand. That's a good place to start.
Absolutely. But most people don't start there. And I mean it in life, right? I mean, it seems it takes most people most of their life to make that a priority.
I only do that on a great day.
Was that always a priority for you?
Yes. Yes, and the name of my LLC is Eye of the Hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't always forget. We don't always have it. Some mornings, when you get access to it, and sometimes I find that peace, that all of that stuff we just talked about is here.
Yeah.
We have access to it if we know how. It's always there.
The mindfulness that I resonate so deeply with your work. When and why did that become a priority for you?
So in my book, The Mindful Athlete: Secrets to Pure Performance, I talk about a specific type of motivation. I'd like to say I got into mindfulness because I was intellectually stimulated or I had this ambition or this interest or curiosity about it. But I got into mindfulness because of what I call AOF method of motivation.
Yep.
And that's pretty much ass on fire. So I had chronic pain and I was in recovery from substance abuse. This happened about 40 years ago. And I had to figure out how to deal with chronic pain. And so I was in an HMO, which was very unusual in that time. There weren't many HMOs around in 1984. But I was in one, and they had a stress management course that was being taught by Dr. Joan Borisenko. And that's when I got into this mind-body process and this idea of being able to self-regulate, self-awareness, self-regulation, that I was responsible for my healthcare, for my well-being. And it wasn't a sense of me going and having somebody give me a pill or cutting something out. It was more about me owning it and being a partner in my own wellness.
It seems we don't want to participate. Like, we want to give away, at least it seems in the world that we're in today, it gets increasingly more and more that we want to almost give our agency away in the change that we desire to create for ourselves. Do you find that true?
Yes. And the more chaotic, the more we're willing to sacrifice autonomy for security or a sense of security, an illusion of security. And I like to talk about it a lot because people don't like to talk about anxiety. And they think if anxiety is present, that means something's wrong. But the reality of the situation is that, and it's interesting because I have a coin here. So it was a gentleman by the name of Soren Kierkegaard. And one side of the coin is tails, the other side is heads. So heads is freedom, potential, and the tails, of course, we're getting into Robert Bly country, the shadow, is anxiety, uncertainty. They come together. They don't come separately. The more freedom you have, the more anxiety. The more potential you have, the more anxiety. The closer you are to achieving or embracing your potential or your greatness within, embracing your masterpiece within, the more anxiety. It's almost like if I don't know, you may not remember the movie Jaws, but Jaws, and Quint was talking about, he was on Indianapolis. This was this I believe it was an aircraft carrier or battleship or whatever, and it was carrying the bomb, the H bomb, and they got torpedoed, and they were in the water for several days. And he said, they formed a circle, and the sharks were coming in and eating people, and he said the scariest time was just before he was getting rescued, just before he was getting pulled out of the water.
It's one of those things, we've all heard the quote of pressure makes diamonds, right? But we don't really think about, I mean, and I loved your perspective on this too, because you've worked with the best of the best, and I don't think people really look deep enough into your journey specifically, because your life has been exceptional to know where you started to where you are to everything that you're doing today. But do you think most people are driven more by that anxiety, by the fear of success versus fear of failure? How do you find that?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because we're where we were, the world, history repeats itself in the
Yeah.
1930s when Hitler was coming to power, and how did that happen, and what was going on, and this I don't know what his title is. I think he's a psychologist. His name was
Mhm.
Eric Fromm. He
Yeah.
wrote a book called Escape from Freedom.
Mhm.
And so it's about the escape. We don't want awareness. We don't want mindfulness, because we do have awareness, then we have to be personally responsible. Now, this is a very existential thing, the
Yeah.
ongoing concerns. And so this is what I learned, when I went to graduate school and I was studying existential philosophy and psychology and whatnot. And they talked about the four ongoing concerns. And the other one is, the first one is fear of death. And so the fear of death, the best way to deal with that is authoritarianism,
Mhm.
conformism, or destructiveness. So if you destroy the sense of self, you won't have any fear or something like that. So you can see people and you can see it. They want to blow stuff up, whether it's physically blowing it up or just dismantling thing, or chaos. And when there's an when it's authoritarianism, you give up all your freedom and power. You escape from your own freedom, your own choice of being able to create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you have the freedom and power to choose. And so we're escaping freedom. So we're giving our freedom to somebody else because it's painful. They say the fear of death, the best way to deal with the fear of death is embrace it, because death is one side of the coin, life is the other side. So the way you deal with the fear of death is you live fully. You embrace death, but in embracing the death, you're embracing life, and you're saying yes. And so, back in 1984, when I was beginning this journey, I read a book called "The Road Less Traveled" by M. Scott Peck,
Yeah.
and I've just rediscovered that 40 years later. And the book begins with "Life is difficult," and so that's an existential idea of, you find meaning in life. And Viktor Frankl talked about that. And you find meaning in a couple of ways. Uh, uh, Creating, what would you say, creating something, right? Creating something or doing a deed, experiencing something or encountering someone. It really is love,
Yeah.
right? And the third way is in an unavoidable suffering, you choose your attitude. So that's the ultimate freedom, is saying, okay, I'm addicted to the drugs and alcohol, or, substances. And it's only by saying yes to it and saying, okay, yes, I have this, I admit it. And then I call it the 4A's: awareness, the acceptance, and that's the challenging part. But
Mhm.
accepting it, yes, this is what's happening. Then once I accept it, then I could do the third one, which is compassionate action. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And doing something about taking personal responsibility. And then the fourth A is assessment. Reflect on what happened, and then you learn from that. We learn from it. So it's having a growth mindset. And it's interesting because Viktor Frankl said that when we find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. And that's what M. Scott Peck was saying. When you accept that life is difficult, then it's no longer a problem. It's no longer difficult because you embraced it. So it's about the acceptance. It's about what's happening is happening because the conditions for what is happening to be happening are present. It's
Mhm.
not personal. And so that's the thing, and this is a profound thing I say a lot. And I keep saying it because I want people to get it, but I want me to get it on a deeper and deeper level. And that is, right now, there's nothing wrong.
Mhm.
In this moment, in this unfolding, unknown moment, there's nothing wrong. But it means we have to be open. We have to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to let it be as it is without trying to control it and without interpreting it as anxiety or any of that stuff. You can anxiety, you can see it as anxiety, and anxiety means I'm doing something wrong. Instead of anxiety means that you're out of your comfort zone and that you can get comfortable being uncomfortable. I talk about this in Mindful Athlete, and that's what we do. So one reason people don't change, or it's challenging for them to accept things as they are, is because when they do that, they have to experience these unpleasant sensations. And that's all it is. But if you notice, you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, because I spent a long time when I was under the influence of doing things that were uncomfortable to do, but I did them because I was looking for that reward for it. But that being comfortable, being uncomfortable, actually created more suffering and more discomfort. Whereas when I'm on my journey of self-discovery, being uncomfortable, getting comfortable being uncomfortable leads to peace, leads to serenity, leads to love, leads to feeling connected. That's different. So you can choose to go the way of peace or to go the way of I don't know, unease or suffering. And so the idea is that something happens, and then we get to choose what it means. So I have this proverbial glass here. And when I'm coming from abundance, when I'm coming from the love orientation, when I'm coming from growth mindset, it's half full. Now, if I'm coming from scarcity, from fear, from survival mode, it's half empty. Both are the same, but you get to choose. And if you choose it as half full, you're going to be in abundance. You're going to experience the bride and build theory. You're going to see whatever happens as a challenge, because this is what I had to learn, the 3 C's. Control. I can control my reaction and my response, commitment, and to see whatever's happening as a challenge. Sean Accord talks about this in his happiness study, is when you see it as a challenge, then you, as the guy that wrote the book, The Stress of Life, Selye, he said that when we embrace this stuff, it's an opportunity for our latent abilities to express themselves when we embrace life. And so it's just like saying, no pressure, no diamonds, no struggle, no swag. That's what I came up with. No struggle, no swag. So right now, if you're in a lot of anxiety and discomfort, you can look at it. That's the proverbial glass being half full. Oh, this is a swag moment here. All right. This is some swag here. I can get some swag on this one.
When I heard
That's
you,
too damn simple.
Yeah. That's exactly it, right? It can't be that simple. And I've heard you frame it that way. I love that framing of it, because it's so true. There's what happens, and then there's a story we tell ourselves about what happens, and that's going to determine our response to what happens. And
That's
I mean,
right.
when you look at the end of your life, the things that built your character, built the person that you are, it's not the great things. It's not the successes. It's the things that led you to do those things. And because of the swag that you gain, I'm curious, from the people that you've worked with, from Yale to Jail to MJ to Kobe to everyone, like, you've worked with so many different kind of people. Do you notice a common story that they tell themselves, about the world, about their challenges?
Yes. So they're in the growth mindset.
Mm.
And just like I talk about the 3 C's, they're
Yeah.
committed to their development, to being who they are, their authentic self, authenticity. That's a very existential term, authenticity. And so it's this idea of, like I said, it doesn't matter. So I can't control what happens to me, but I can control my reaction or my response. Right. And so I'm choosing. So that's it. So it's control, commitment to my development, growth, to being who I am, and then seeing it as a challenge. This is an opportunity. This is growth mindset. What's the lesson? What do I need to learn? Because if I don't learn it, I'm going to keep experiencing it, re-experiencing it. So go back to what you said before, the assumption of responsibility, self-awareness, and assumption of responsibility, personal responsibility. Those are things we have to do. And then once you assume it, then you can go to it. So once again, I'm going back to what M. Scott Peck talked about. He talked about this idea of discipline. And he talked about it in 4 ways, but I'll talk about 3 of them. delaying gratification, especially instant gratification, right? Assumption of responsibility. And then the third thing is commitment to the truth or to things as they are. So if you play a game and you lose, you lost. And so then you got to say, oh, you make a mistake. You can't deny the mistake. You deny a mistake, then you're denying yourself the ability to grow. You make a mistake, okay. So it's an opportunity for you to learn something. So what do you need to learn and practice to be able to achieve what you want to achieve? It's really simple. Then the fourth thing, he talks about balancing. And balancing, you can talk about equanimity or whatever, but what it really is saying is when I'm having a conversation with you, like as we are now, I have to bracket my parts of, my persona, my experiences, my conditions, and my, I want my heart to be open, my mind to be open, or Brene Brown would be talking about this idea of vulnerability, of this being vulnerable to the unknown unfolding moment. Can I allow things to be as they are? Can I have a mirror mind that just reflects what's there? And so I can see it. So we want to have this beginner's mind, or this like a childlike, and curiosity of just what is this, and seeing it with new eyes, with fresh eyes. So we have to renew our mind. We have to change our mind. And a lot of times when I want to just recognize that Quincy Jones passed away, and he's done amazing things. And one of the things he did when he recorded "We Are the World," and he had all these amazing people come in, he said to them, "Leave your egos at the door." So these ideas of yourself, who you think you are, your persona, whatever, if you can get out of that, if you can just leave that, set that aside, you can set self aside and just see things uncritically, just see things as they are without a referencing of. And mindfulness is this ability to just see things, let things speak to you in their own language. So there's not this idea of, so instantly there's the raw data, something happens, you see it, but immediately there's an infusion of self-interest, abstract thinking, associative thinking, seeing things based on what we know instead of seeing things in a fresh way without resorting to that, just letting it speak to us in our own language. And so we don't do that. Most of the time we see things, and this is it's efficient, but it's not effective. We see something and then there's an interpretation of what it means based on what we already know, instead of creating more space so that you can actually see more of it. So it's the analogy I like to use is where I grew up, transportation, we had elevated trains, and we had transportation where sometimes you'd have to take a bus or a train, or I would have to take a bus, then a train, then another bus. And so I'd go to this particular station, and it was Forest Hills. And so I get off the train and I'm coming down, and I see that there's a bus there about to take off, and it didn't have the colors in the old days, and it didn't even have the destination on the side of the bus. You had to go to the front of the bus. So I come down, I run, I'm in a hurry because we're always in a hurry. And I look at the sign, and I look really quickly, BR. And then I jump on the bus. Then I'm going there. And then I end up going to Bridgewater when I wanted to go to Brockton.
Right.
And it was just a matter of one letter. Sometimes it's a letter more. So do we have the courage to just let ourselves take all the letter in, even though we have this idea the door's gonna close, we're gonna miss it. We have to do that. So we have this habitual way of relating to experience based on what we already know, and we're programmed to that. And we sort of need that, because you can't be in a moment if you're not sort of making these connections where you see something and it's like thin slicing. You see a slice of it, and sometimes it's enough, but sometimes it's not. And so this idea of being mindful, or having the mind, giving ourselves the time to let whatever we're observing, mirror mind, just speak to us in its own language without us interpreting what it is, but letting it tell us what it is. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. There's a book that I've heard you speak about. One of the most pivotal books for me was Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz.
Yes.
And when I first read that book, it was this understanding of our minds are meaning-making machines. So we're trying to make sense of who we are and what the world is. As you're saying here, it's this understanding of that clouded judgment can get very clouded very, very easily, because
Right.
we're trying to make sense of things. And something that I find, and I'd love to know your perspective on it, is that your relationship with yourself is going to reflect your performance in whatever it is. And it seems as though that's what you go back to, is what's the relationship with the person that they are. Do you find that that's a common thread that you found in all the people you've worked with, is that's what you're trying to get to, is their authenticity needs to be represented?
So let's just unpack that a little bit.
Mhm.
And there's a saying, I heard it from Brian Tracy, the motivational speaker,
Yep.
but I hear it come. It was back before him. He got it from somewhere else. You are not what you think you are,
Mhm.
but what you think you are. So it's your thinking has affects what you're seeing, your state of mind. I have on glasses. I don't know I have on glasses because they're there,
Yeah.
but in this case, I have bifocals. So let's just say the upper thing is love, and the lower one is fear. Whatever one I'm looking through, that's going to affect my experience.
Mhm.
I experience this all the time. Sometimes I don't know people. Sometimes I'm making eggs, and when I crack the shell, a little piece gets in the mix.
Yep.
And when I go to get it, there's a part of me says, "Well, you're not going to be able to get it that way. You need a spoon." Instead of just put my finger in there and then feeling it and taking it out. So there's a relationship to, and this Maxwell Maltz talks about this. So now we're getting back into the frame of mind, the positive mindset, or what Sean and Core referred to as positive genius. You got to
Mhm.
get yourself in a positive mindset, right? And when you're in a positive mindset, it's what they call positivity, or the broaden and build theory. When your mind is at positive, then your cognitive functioning is like, instead of being like this, your mind opens up, your heart
Yeah.
opens up, and you're willing to see things beyond what you already know. Does that make sense? So there's a relationship with thinking and the attitude. So I talk about, you're either in love and fear, and this goes back to I think the guy's name is Bruce Lipton. He wrote a book called
Had him on the show.
Biology of Belief.
Yeah.
And he said on a cellular level,
Mhm.
we're either in survival mode or growth mode. We're either in fear or love. So that has an impact. So you got to know the quality of your mind and your mental tendencies.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm saying? So so you got to, whereas George Clinton would say, free your mind and your ass will follow. Uh, it's like you have to understand that the observing mind is the most important thing.
Mhm.
The most important thing
Yet we're so
is your
identified.
frame of reference, or as Eric Fromm would call it, frames of orientation and devotion.
Yeah.
That you have to have a place from which you observe experience. So if you're observing experience from what we talked about, the inner peace, the tranquility, the serenity, when you're in at positive. And when I talk about athletes, or not just athletes, but you'll be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How do you get there? HOF, how do you get there? Hope, optimism, faith.
Mhm.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice. But it's perfect practice, not just practice, but the right practice, a practice where you learn and you change, you grow, you keep adapting. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And I love your work so much. I just get so excited talking about this kind of stuff. It is what I've been so fascinated with for so long. I had Bruce Lipton on, or I think it was earlier this year, last year, because I
Well,
find
how's
that
dude doing? How's he doing?
I mean, hey, I think he's similar to everyone else, where he's, well, I guess not, but he's in a place of heaven, it seems, and always in a state of life is that's what life is really, when he can access that state of consciousness. You said a minute ago how the observing mind is what's most important, but I think more than ever, we're so identified with who we think we are that we don't even know how to be the observer. And it
I get
seems
on glasses and I don't know I have on glasses because
yeah,
it becomes part of
that
me,
is life.
and I don't recognize that. Oh, and so this idea of self, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm,
The idea here is we gotta have this. I talk about it really to get the self mastery. You got to have self awareness and then self regulation.
yep.
Self regulation is the self generated thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but more importantly, is self generation of understanding how you are observing from what frame of orientation, and then what are you devoted to. So you can see a lot of people, their frames of orientation is not reality. It's what they say reality is, or a reality that fits what they want to do.
Yeah.
So the facts be damned. or
Yeah.
don't believe your lying eyes, or whatever. And sometimes the lies can be, it could be an illusion, especially now with AI. It could be something that's made. So what do? You have to investigate. You have to notice it and see if it's true. You understand what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
so this is what the challenge is, and it takes work, and it takes vulnerability, and it takes having a faith of groundedness to be able to say whatever is present, I'm going to embrace it, generate the hope, and make a wise choice
Yeah.
accordingly.
The
So
I
when I talked about, the discipline, delaying gratification, assumption of personal responsibility, and commitment to the truth, commitment to things as they are. True north is true north. That's it. So if you lead a principle-centered life, principles are really good, are helpful. Why? Because principles are universal and timeless and self-evident. So why is that important? Because you can check it out and see if it's true. But you don't have to believe in gravity. But if you jump up, you are coming down. It's just that. You just have to. So you don't have to agree with it. You can deny its existence. But at some point, reality bites. At some point, reality is going to smack you in the face. And that's why know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Besides, that commitment to the truth is really important. And being able to be equanimous, or being able to set self aside and to see all experiences, as Dr. David Hawkins talks about, are of equal value. Not preferring, but the nervous system is programmed to approach what is pleasant, to avoid what is not, that's neither, to avoid what's unpleasant. And if it's neither pleasant or unpleasant, and you don't have any curiosity there or interest, then you space out.
Yeah.
We spend most of our time in that last one
Mhm.
because there's no goal or anything. We're just kind of like just hanging out in no man's land or in the neutral zone. But it's not so neutral because we space out, and that's when we get caught on our devices, or that's when we can get into trouble with things because we're trying to fill that emptiness because it's uncomfortable or for whatever. That's my experience. I can't speak for everyone else. But if we know that it's not personal, that if it's pleasant, we got to program ourselves that even though it's pleasant, to see it, but not to attach it and grab onto it and approach it in a way where we're not seeing the impermanent nature of it because it's going to change. And or we're moving away from something. So this idea of be still and know, as they say in the Bible, something about just holding your space, just observing uncritically.
I think it was probably Viktor Frankl as well, where he says, when you lack a sense of meaning and fulfillment, you distract yourself with temporary pleasure. So you're right. And that's where most people live their lives. I think most people are driven by fear rather than being pulled by a desire. At least it seems that way. But I'm curious, from the people that you've worked with, it seems as though they're, Michael Jordan, for example, being cut from his high school basketball team, and he's always trying to drive from a place of, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to not make the team again. Do you think do you think he's stayed there throughout his career?
No, I don't think well, I, my experience and having
Yeah.
worked with him for a while,
Yeah.
uh, when I met him, and when I first met him, he wasn't. It was the team. He was there. I met him and I said hi
95.
to him, whatever. But when he came back in March of 95,
Mhm.
1995, I felt like every time he gets on the court, he's still trying to make the team.
Yeah.
So he got cut from his high school basketball team. And I think the story is the coach, I don't know if it was the coach or a coach,
Mhm.
said to him, kind of like cool in the game, what you going to do? Are you going to get down? Get up off the wall? He said, what you going to do? My nephew was paralyzed. He was a gangbanger. And his mother said to him, are you going to give up or are you going to get up? Okay. And he got up, and his amazing life in spite of being paralyzed. So here's what I'm saying. So MJ used that. He was as a challenge.
Mhm.
I'm never going to get cut again. Now he didn't play out of anxiety and like vigilance, like the shoe's going to drop. It was his
Right.
confidence came from understanding that I choose my response, and I see this as a challenge. I see this as a way of accessing, as Salye said, my latent abilities.
Yeah.
And so that's it. So they all have this idea of seeing things as opportunities. And like I said, seeing things from glass half full, a growth mindset that Professor Dweck talks about from Stanford. It's a growth mindset. What's the lesson?
Mhm.
What do I need to learn and practice to be able to do what I need to do? And
It's
so
cool.
that's it. So you can see it. You talk about the mama mentality. Kobe, that was his thing. It's like, okay, he's going to. So if you think about how their history or their experience has framed them. So I believe it was his first playoff game, whatever. It was one playoff game. He had like 3 or 4. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 air balls when he's shooting.
Mhm.
So how did he respond to that? Well, he went back home. He was living in Newport Beach. He got back home, and only Kobe would know this. He cold called the custodian and asked him to open up the school gym,
Of course.
and he shot for 8 hours. Just saying. So it's not what happens to you; it's it's how you relate to it that determines. You are what you repeatedly do. I think
Yeah.
Socrates said that. So then excellence is a choice. So you choose, okay, what you're going to do. Are you going to give up or get up? That's it. And so the people who are elite performers, and Sean Accord talks about 3 things. He talks about positive genius, social support, and seeing things that people see as a curse, as a challenge, as a blessing. So, and when those 3 things are in vogue, up to, I think, 75% accuracy, you can see whether somebody's going to achieve in their goal or whatever their endeavor is.
So you've heard the quote, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself most with, right? Well, that's more true than you could possibly imagine. And what if those 5 people were a human lie detector, an FBI negotiator, an ex-CIA spy, a billionaire, and everything in between? Well, that's exactly what I've been able to do with my podcast over these past few years. From starting in my car with no money, no experience, no following, not even a microphone, and now I'm collaborating with some of the most profound individuals in the world. And it's because of 2 simple things: crafting the perfect pitch so that when the person sees the message, they are open to actually entertaining the opportunity of speaking with you. And number 2, finding a way to get that pitch seen to begin with so that you actually can get in that room. And if you want to learn the skills and how I've been able to get the guests that I've been able to get in my show without any kind of audience or experience, the link in the description will be there for Get Your Guest, my course, and how I've been able to collaborate and connect with some profound individuals and show you how you can too.
Yeah. It seems life happens to you or through you, and you kind of decide what happens when life challenges you with those opportunities, or
Half empty,
obstacles.
half full.
Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
are right, but one puts you in survival mode where you're in the reptilian brain. We're getting back to Lipton,
Yeah.
and when you're in the reptilian brain, 9 out of 10 thoughts are negative. Why? Because you're looking for danger. Whereas when you're in growth mode, you're looking for opportunity. You're
Mhm.
looking for the way forward. You know that there's a way forward. You know there's light, and you go to it. So I like to play with this one. So when you turn your back, it's interesting. When you turn your back to the light, you see your shadow.
Yeah.
Just saying. But
Yeah.
at some time, you got to see your shadow before you know that you're not facing the light.
Mm. Man, the depth of your work is you could see it.
That's a whole workshop right there.
Yeah, I mean,
A master class.
it gets me it gets me so excited because there's not many people that are doing the work that you do, but going back to the foundational core things that we need to focus on that we don't really want to accept to be true. And that's our relationship with ourselves. That's finding peace in the moment. That's finding love in everything that happens. There's so much depth to your work. I'm curious, from the extensive career that you've had, from 40 years, I think 40 years of sobriety now, 41.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Can I change the way you worded that?
please.
The experience, the career that I am having,
Mm,
because I'm not done yet.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just saying.
No, I'm with you, and I appreciate you correcting me, because I think the people that I'm inspired by most are people like you and Bruce, where we're not looking for retirement. You're looking for things that continue to fill your cup up and allow you to give so that you can keep. And that's something that I really learned from you. I love that perspective of you have to give it away so you can keep it, and you have to teach it so you learn it. I mean, and that's the depth of so much, but we don't
That's
really
right.
see life through that lens, and I think it's really inspiring to see that approach.
Yeah, and I quoted Hans Selye. He wrote "The Stress of Life."
Mhm.
One of the other profound things he said was that the idea is not to add more years to life. The idea is to add more life to years.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
don't know how much time I have, but the only time I really have is now. Only time that exists is now. So if I stay in the now, or the power of now, as you know, what's his name?
Eckhart Tolle?
Eckhart Tolle
Yes, sir.
talked about. That's the power. It's right now. It's in the now. The power to change, the power to transform is now. And I've read, one of the things I've done is I've read over a book a week for the last 40 plus years.
Yeah.
And one of the books, one of the authors that I read a lot is Neville Goddard. They call him Neville.
Mhm.
But in the jacket of one of his books, he has a profound statement. He says, "Leave the mirror alone and change your face."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it. Michael Jackson might say the man in the mirror, but people say it in different ways. But to me, that's profound. If your face is in a frown, you're using like 72 muscles or whatever. And if you smile, you're only losing like 12 or 13. I don't know what the exact count is. And it's much easier. It's energy, it's attracting, it's connecting the energy when you are kind, when you're in that positivity, when you are loving or embracing or seeing self in other. I say I and the other are one. This illusion of separateness, when I get beyond that, I'm able to run towards the explosion in the Boston Marathon instead of running away from it, running into the Twin Towers instead of running away from it. Because
There's
there's a sense where we get beyond self and I and the other are one. The illusion of separateness is not there. And when you're in the flow, when you're in the zone, you're not there. You're not there. And action and thought and action are
Come on.
co-arising. They're happening as one, without a hair's breadth in between, because there's nobody there. It's just this ability of being in the flow of life, allowing the flow. In my book, the other book, Unlocked, Embrace the Greatness, Find the Flow, Discover Success. That's it. Once you embrace, you're a bad mofo. You're wired for success. You just have to make the decision that you are going to access it. Your masterpiece, your Buddha nature, your Christ consciousness, whatever your cosmology is or whatever your belief system is, it really doesn't matter. What matters is there's a greatness inside of you. There's a potentiality inside of each of us. And we're all unique in our own ways. So there's never going to be another James. There never was and never will be, other than the one that's here. And so your job, in my opinion, my job is to help you unlock so you can embrace your greatness, find the flow, discover success, and share that with the rest. Now I'm starting to hip hop a little bit, but I'm just saying.
No, I love it. My first coach told me, and this stuck with me, and it will stick with me forever, is you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world.
Yes.
Every single one of us, we have something to give to the world. If we're not giving it, that's why we feel we have no meaning in this life. But as soon as we give it away, we get to keep it. We get to continue to build onto it.
So the question is, what do you have to offer the world?
Yeah.
Who you are. That's all you have. Everything else could be, that's nice, but the deepness of you offering yourself. So for me, what I have to offer the world is this idea of wanting to unlock every human being. And the values that are at the heart of who I am are love, curiosity, truth, wisdom, integrity, selfless service, compassion, courage. That for which I can be counted on for is to be loving with a warrior spirit, with a serving and compassionate heart, pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease. That's my charter that I've been operating under for, I don't know how many years, maybe 10, 12. But the interesting thing is I'll never get there. There's always progress, not perfection. Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So people say, well, you'll never get it, so you're not successful. No, I'm successful every day. Every day it's progress, not perfection. Become a
Success.
perfectionist here.
Yeah.
Saying one of my identities, it's not an identity, it's my way, it's my conditioning. So, but I make that work for me.
Yeah. Success is standards. It's like we're always being unlocked. So the fact that to think that we're ever a finished product is missing the whole purpose of life. Is the whole purpose is to, at least from my perspective, is to enjoy the passage of time while giving away the gift that you have while you're
Yes.
here.
Yes. So I have, I read so much. I don't know if it was Eric Butterworth's work or somebody, but I read somewhere where we have this illusion that we're fixed points.
Yeah.
In the actuality, we are ever changing events.
Yeah. I heard you say that in a previous podcast, and I genuinely have yet to find anything that you've said that I'm not like, yeah, yep, that's exactly it. I feel it. I feel it. It's not a knowingness, but it's a just a feeling of truth. And truth is usually always simple, but we want to overcomplicate it, it seems.
So let's stop there because this is really important. There's a still small voice. That when we get into that space that Joseph Campbell talked about as an athlete, he experienced it more as a jazz musician, and he was like a Renaissance man. He did a lot of different things.
Mm.
But he says when you come from that place of rest, a silent place where you're not compelled by fear or desire, you perform properly, or you have pure performance, as I would call it. And so if you didn't understand what I said, all I'm doing is reminding you what you already know. And that's why I'm saying you're a bad mofo. You just
Yeah.
don't know. Just say that's it. And then you realize when you can be still, you'll know. And when you let it sink in and you reflect on it, you'll get it. And Alan Watts, he was very famous for a lot of things. One of the things he did, he brought Zen to the West in a way that was really comprehensive, but he was beyond all that. He said in his book, there's an amazing book he wrote. He wrote a lot of books. One of them called the book, but The Wisdom of Insecurity.
Yeah, amazing book.
He said, to ask the question is to know the answer. So when I pick up this pen, that's the question. The answer is here.
Mhm.
But there's a space there. So you got to be still and know, or you investigate, you ask questions, you interview people, you seek to understand. But there's a part of you that knows, and when you find it, you know it's true. That's the wisdom part that we have inside, the intuition, the direct experience of something, to know it. And a lot of these things we know, as Joseph Campbell talked about, is beyond human research. You can't really talk about it. It's what we call implicit or non-declarative learning. So it's funny because every time somebody says, I see somebody say, "Hey, how you doing?" They say, "So far, so good." I start laughing, and they say, "Why do you laugh?" I said, "Because there's a movie that came out. I don't know when it came out, but it was Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt and a bunch of other guys that a lot of actresses and actors that I really love. And Chris Pratt is talking about a guy that was in a saloon, and he fell out the fifth-story window. And as he was passing each floor, it, it was people were saying what they heard was him saying, "So far, so good." so, so
Right. I guess so.
So at some point, you can reflect on that and say, well, dude didn't really suffer much until he hit the ground. But so far, so good. So he was in the moment and just enjoying the fall.
Yeah.
So, but it's that imagery, right? That idea that even if we're going towards catastrophe or whatever, or some people would say as we're moving towards death,
Yeah.
we don't have to be so terrified that each floor that we're falling, each sequence of the journey, we are actually suffering. Instead of just saying, "Hey, so far so good. I'm all right right now. There's nothing wrong."
The resistance to life is what is it's so funny because life happens and then there's the resistance that we place on it and then there's our suffering right there. I love that.
Yes.
Never have not heard it framed that way.
Yeah. And, in recovery, I heard that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yep.
Or something to that effect. But once
Yeah.
again, when you find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. And so when I think of my substance abuse and my chronic pain, people would say, well, wasn't that challenging to think about? I said, no, because it was my way to where I am. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be, you go through those experiences. And so it's how you relate to them, how you learn from them, how you make sense of them.
Yeah.
Your meaning, how you make meaning of them. And we talked about ways of making meaning, creating a work of art or doing a deed, encountering somebody or experiencing some experience, I have a lot of experiences when I think about my work with Kobe or MJ or any other Shaq or it could be Dennis Rodman, whatever.
Yeah.
That experience, and then last year working with the Edmonton Oilers and going to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
That's an experience no one can take from you. Winning a championship, you have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's a meaningful thing to go through that, and to go through it with in a way. When you think about it, I reflect on that experience, and a Canadian team hadn't won the cup in 31 years, and so working for the Oilers, and even though we didn't win the Stanley Cup, we inspired millions of people, and we brought people together in the city and all of Canada, but all across, because my friends that they said, "What you doing?" "Oh, I'm working with this team." "Oh, I'm gonna watch them." And now it means something to me because now I have a connection to you, and I want to see them. Or you get to see Connor McDavid or Leon or all the other great players, all of these great players that are playing, and you get to see there's something spiritual about seeing somebody going beyond what we perceive as our limitations, or like being together, and as a whole, the synergy of what it takes, and that sort of thing. And so something happens, you interpret it. I interpret it like, yeah, we want the cup, but at the same time, uh, the impact we had on people and on the world was
Yeah.
huge.
The core of this podcast, and I'll ask my last question I ask every guest because I know we're short on time, is so much of this entire conversation is it's unlearning more than it is. We need to learn new things, but we also need to unlearn what we think we know or what we think to be, the concrete truth of life. My question to you on top of that is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
What belief am I currently unlearning is an ongoing thing. This idea of permanence, this idea that we shouldn't suffer,
Yeah.
or things in life is not difficult, and understanding that what's really important is seeking to understand, seek to understand, then to be understood. But what I'm really learning is that peace is in the moment right now, right? Like what I'm learning, and I talk about it, but it's not realized. Right now, there's nothing wrong. In this moment, there's nothing wrong. And even if something happens, I can choose to see it as it's happening because it's supposed to be happening,
Yeah.
because the conditions are right. I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and the universe, God, doesn't give me any more than I can handle. So I'm unlearning. I guess the main thing is I'm learning is I need to unlearn is this idea that life shouldn't be difficult. I think, and that people shouldn't be complicated. That everybody should love each other, and why can't we get along? All of that is, even though you know it, but there's a conditioning that you keep. That some part of you is resistant.
Yeah.
To accepting the truth about things. And it could be somebody you love and they do something wrong, or they do something unconscionable, or they make a choice where you say to yourself, what are they thinking? Or what are they doing? And then I have to remind myself, like Socrates, I think, said, all men choose only the good. But the reality is, if I see things the way that they see things, I do what they're doing.
Exactly.
So everything always makes perfect sense. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah.
If you have to get in, you have to seek to understand, then to be understood. So you seek, okay, how does somebody go in and shoot up? My friend was working at Virginia Tech when that shooting was going on, and I called him and we were talking a little bit. He was sheltered in his classroom with his students, and I had been there. I had been a guest at it because when I used to hang out with him, visit him, he would take me to class, and then because he taught journalism and whatnot, and he would have his students. That's how I found out about Google. He had his students interview me, so they Googled me, and they had all this stuff in Google. I didn't even know that existed. Oh, that's interesting. And so it's this idea of people do things, but we all have those same capacities. We have those same seeds, of I would say fear. It's all fear based. We all have this capacity to love or to fear. And I talk about all the time the two wolves. One
Yeah.
wolf is fear, the other one is love.
Love.
And it's the old Cherokee saying
Yeah.
of the grandfather explaining to his grandson he has this ferocious battle going on inside of him between two wolves, and just for simplicity, we call one fear and one love. And the grandson gets really concerned and says, "Grandfather, which one will win?" And the grandfather says, "The one I feed." So the question is, I still have to learn how to stop feeding the fear wolf.
Yeah.
Even though on one level I understand it, but habits die hard, and I can see myself getting into, awfulizing or blame and denying. And that's just human. That's a human experience. I don't get beyond being human.
Yeah. The core of everyone is the one thing that every single human does. We just forget. We forget. And that's it.